Alright. Hello, everybody. So, let's see. Was rushing to get the, get everything ready for the live stream. Let me just go to my channel, and I'll check out the comments. But as for, Tyler's question about TSMS Laconia, I think honestly it really depends on where you're from. Sometimes the name of something will sound completely different to someone depending on what kind of accent they have. When I say like Glasgow, Scotland, apparently the people from Glasgow, some of them, can really warble their vowels, and it'll sound like a different word. So, I mean, it really just depends on where you're from, honestly. But, yeah. TSMS Laconia, or you can say it how he says it in the video. I haven't seen his video, so I don't know how he says it, but yeah. All right, let's see here. Ken says, "Hey Alex, your shed and bridge look awesome. Nice work. Have you ever seen an N or Z scale train layout built into an old suitcase? I'm thinking of making one as an Amtrak Columbia River Gorge theme." That sounds like a really good idea. I have seen photographs of Z scale layouts built into a briefcase. An N scale layout would be okay, but it would be... what's the word? Just, it would be a circle, or a very, very slight oval. So, I've seen it done. Yeah, I've seen it done. Hello, Lusitania. Hello, Warships. Hello, Impressive Line. Hello, Isaiah. Hi, Sniper Goofy. Thank you, Jacob. Hello, Modcat. Kelly McGuire says, "What's your opinion on SS Normandy?" So SS Normandy, I often compare it to classical places in Europe, like the Vatican or the Palace of Versailles. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful ship. But it's not one that I would want to stay in. I wouldn't want to sleep in and live aboard it for, 4 or 5 days. So that's kind of how I view it. Let me try to get some of these McVitie's out. So these are chocolate-covered biscuits for tea. I was gonna make a new batch of Scottish shortbread last night, but I was just busy. I just couldn't do it. Let's see here. Let me just put this in the refrigerator. I think I have everything else I needed from the refrigerator. Let me open this door a little bit. There we go. I'm going to try to answer somebody's question while I'm working. So let me see. Hello, Alex and the seaside of Bulgaria. I don't know much about steamer trunks, Doc, but I do know that it was common for everybody to use them. Let's see. Why do some people draw or put Lusitania with Olympic and Titanic and call them the Three Sisters? I've never seen that. Is there a famous painting or something with that? Or I haven't seen that. That would be weird to put them as the Three Sisters, because they're not. Okay, hold on. Let me just put this in the refrigerator. Okay. move this further this way. Alright, so today's tea is going to be English breakfast tea. Every time I do these streams, I'm always tempted to just, you know, brew some Earl Grey, but I have to remember to evenly drink down the teas, or else some of the boxes will just sit there and get kind of old. Have I not opened this? I guess not. Pretty sure I opened it. Yeah, no. I guess this is it. Okay. Well, good thing I caught this now, because I didn't want to like keep drinking down the other teas while this one was never even open. Alright, so teaspoon. Yeah. With these specific Cunard teapots, they I think they go best with 2.5 teaspoons of tea leaves. Unless, of course, you're having Lady Grey tea. Lady Grey, for some reason, it's only good if you have just 2 teaspoons. If you put the extra half teaspoon, it just becomes really a strange, strong flavor. Alright, so let's see. Build Warship says, Alex, I'm thinking of making a 5-foot HMS Warspite of a 5-foot RMS Queen Elizabeth out of cardboard. That sounds like quite an endeavor, but good luck, because I'm sure it'll be really fun. Top Impressive Line says, hey Alex, what is your favorite White Star liner? Sorry, I lost track of the question. What's your favorite White Star liner? From your top 10 ocean liners video, my guess is the RMS Oceanic. Yeah, it would be RMS Oceanic if I'm remembering correctly. Because if it made it onto the top 10 list and it's, you know, closest to number 1, then that would be my top favorite White Star liner. So, all right, let's see. Daniel says, Alex, why does the Lusitania Mauretania bridge look different? You know, I can't remember if I read something somewhere where there was a specific reason. But I don't remember. There was a specific reason, I think, as to why they look different. I mean, obviously the two ships were built in two different shipyards, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have to look different just because they were built in two different shipyards. But there was a reason. I just don't remember off the top of my head. I don't think it was all that of a big deal. I think it was really just more of a design thing, just to kind of help you answer the question. But yeah. Modcat says, what's your honest opinion of the QE2? By the way, where is it? The QE2 is in Dubai right now. It has been converted to a luxury hotel, and it's actually doing pretty well from what I hear. It's pretty successful. And I've seen some vlogs of people who visited the QE2 in Dubai, and it looks beautiful. I mean, they have modernized a lot of the interiors, but not in a way that I think looks bad. I think it looks pretty good, actually. And as for my opinion of the QE2, I mean, I like it. I like it a lot. It's on my top 10 favorites list. It's not the favorite of mine, though, only because I tend to prefer liners that are pre-war, meaning like before World War II. I'm not that interested in post-war liners, just because they're different architecture, different style, different design, you know. The Queen Mary too, I really like the Queen Mary too. But again, it's a modern liner. you know, I really like the old steamers, you know. So, but yeah, I like the QE2. Top on my top 10. The Iron Legion says, have you ever wanted or thought about visiting the Queen Elizabeth wreckage? It's not there. I don't know why people keep saying that it's there, but it's not. They did remove it from the bottom of the harbor. The Japanese Navy was asked to come in to scrap the whole ship and clear it from the harbor because it's a very shallow harbor, and that's where a lot of the shipping lines come in to deliver cargo and stuff. So, and it's like right there in the middle of the channel, so they really needed to clear that area and have it available. So it's a very shallow harbor. I mean, if you don't believe me, just look at the photographs of when the Queen Elizabeth burned and capsized. If it was a very deep harbor, you wouldn't see it peeking up through the water the way it did. I mean, it was out of the water. So yeah, it is gone. It is not on the bottom there. Let's see here. But have I ever wanted to visit the wreckage area? Not really. I wouldn't, even if it was down there, I wouldn't see anything because the water is so dark, you know, you wouldn't be able to see anything. It's not like going to Hawaii to the USS Arizona where you can literally stand over it, look down and see the wreckage of the Arizona, but you know, yeah. Ozzy says, how is Alex? It's cold here, Fort Mojave. The winds are starting to die down. We've actually had clear skies both yesterday and today. It is pretty cold at night. Today is actually the warmest day we've had in a week. So it's 45 degrees today. But the sun is out, 45 degrees. To me, this is a perfect day. Like, I know some people, a perfect day is 75 degrees Fahrenheit, clear skies, sunny, you know. But to me, this is like, well, I guess this is almost the perfect day. I do prefer rain more than I prefer sunshine. But when it comes to a sunshine day, this is my perfect one. 45 degrees, beautiful. It's not so cold that, you know, you're freezing your face off. But it's not so warm that, you know, you're removing layers. You can wear some nice layers and stuff. So when it comes to sunny days, I'd say today is a good day. And right now the sun is kind of setting, so you know, everything's kind of golden outside. There's a nice golden color. Boy, it is taking a while to boil that water. That seems so odd. It's almost boiled, but still, it's like, that's been on for a while. Isaiah says, what do you think of British steam trains from the UK? Some of them I think are very beautiful. But I'm, in general, just not as interested as British trains. A lot of them hide the running gear. The running gear is the side rods and all that stuff. A lot of them hide the running gear, and I like looking at the running gear. That's one of my favorite things about looking at steam trains, is seeing the side rods moving and all that stuff. So, yeah, they're pretty cool, but there are a few British steam locomotives that do have the side rods easily visible, and those are the ones I tend to like the most. But yeah. Alright, so that water is boiled. Let's go ahead and... I put hot tap water in the china to preheat it, but that tap water is now almost cold because it's been sitting so long waiting for that water to boil. I wonder if the water in the pipes is just that cold. It has been pretty cold recently. Alright, let's go ahead and... I'm only emptying them out halfway. The boiling water added to it will help bring up the temperature. So we'll let that sit and get a little bit warmer. Then we'll dump it all out with fresh boiling water added into it. And we'll call that good. Okay, so... Jacob says, is your layout DC or DCC? It is DC, so it's an analog layout. But I'm able to keep more than one locomotive on the tracks at a time because I have created spur lines on the layout that are isolated from the main power. So if I want to run an engine that is parked along a spur line or something, I can turn a switch to activate the power to the spur line, and I can control it along with the main line power. And that allows it so that way I literally can have up to 3 locomotives on the entire layout. Technically 4. No, because if you need to put the 4th one away, then there's no place to put it. So yeah, there's enough capacity for 3 locomotives on the layout that can be individually controlled, so one at a time can run. Yeah. Iron Legion says, how did you react and feel about the scrapping of Queen Mary's lifeboats? I was pretty sad. At the time, I was working with QMI Restore the Queen, and, you know, we were trying to get in contact with the city of Long Beach. We had contacts with them, you know, and we were doing all these things, you know. You want to know the reason why they even gave 60 days to allow... Actually, do you want to know the reason why they even allowed the lifeboats to go for a free bid? Was because us at QMI, we asked them to do that. They weren't going to do that originally. The lifeboats were going to just be removed from the ship and scrapped. But all of us at QMI teamed together, sent them... lots of emails, lots of correspondence, you know, talking to them, and we convinced them to try to give the lifeboats away. You know, if you're going to throw something away, might as well give it away for free, right? You know, so they did do that, and originally they said, okay, we'll give people 30 days, which, you know, I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, but, you know, just answering your question. But there are... The thing about any museum, nonprofit, or even just a private ownership, when it comes to acquiring an artifact as large as those lifeboats are 12 feet wide, 6 feet tall, and 36 feet long. They are huge. Each of them can weigh up to 15,000 pounds. They weighed more when they were, you know, brand new, but yet now so much has been removed out of them, they weigh less. But, you know, they weigh like 15,000 pounds each. And so they're heavy, they're huge, and they're just big enough to require a wide load permit through the United States. Every county you go through, you have to have a wide load permit for that county. So with all that in mind, and the expense and how big of an undertaking it is to acquire even something like that for free will cost a lot of money and a lot of time. It will take, you know, even a rich museum anywhere between 6 to 12 months to plan everything out and have all the money and all the funding, everything ready. And so, yeah, 6 to 12 months. They gave everybody 1 month. So again, we at QMI contacted them and said, we need you to extend that. You know, we can get other museums interested. And believe me, everybody at QMI was emailing museums around the world. I know I had emailed at least 6 museums around the world. One of them being the Clydebank Maritime Museum in Scotland. They never responded back to me. But I did email them. And we were trying to see if any museums or any private organizations that were interested in preservation would come in and take a lifeboat. And there were a few that were interested. The problem was they all said the same thing. You know, 30 days is nowhere near enough. We contacted the city of Long Beach, got them to extend it, but they extended it by another 30 days. So in total, there was only 2 months. And 2 months, again, even at the fastest of acquiring something like a lifeboat, takes 6 months. So there was no way. There was one company that was really interested in bidding for it, getting the free bid for the lifeboat, and then taking it to their new building complex that's in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and they were gonna use it as like a lobby artifact because their building complex was going on top of the old Cunard docks in Halifax. So they thought, what better way to celebrate the Cunard docks than having a lifeboat from the Queen Mary? Which Queen Mary did go to Halifax to pick up and drop off Canadian soldiers during the war. So Queen Mary was there. It just wasn't enough time. That company just dropped out pretty quickly because they were interested, but there was not enough time, you know? So when they did remove the lifeboats and started scrapping them, I was pretty disappointed. I felt like things could have been done better if they had just put the lifeboats somewhere, even in the corner of the property, you know, surrounded by chain link fencing and stuff like that, and just given us, you know, a couple more months. I'm sure that we would have been able to find at least somebody to at least take one. At least, you know. So, but yeah, it was just a very impossible timeline. I think they had a lot of stuff to do. They needed the parking lot for staging of various projects, as well as, you know, at the time there was movies being filmed on the Queen Mary, so I think they just needed space. So I think that's why they were in such a hurry to get rid of the lifeboats. But we did convince them to save. So they were going to save 2 lifeboats for the ship. One of them was going to be on Davit 2. The other one was going to be on Davit 3. So there actually is an example of a accident lifeboat and a full-size lifeboat on the ship. They saved those for preservation on the ship. And then there's a third lifeboat. Lifeboat number 14 is on the dock, and that will be for visitors to walk around and see it. So there will be 3 lifeboats at the Queen Mary site for preservation. We also managed to convince them to keep 5 others. So there are 5 other lifeboats that have been transported to a city annex, like a storage space, and they are being kept there. So, yeah, you know, I have been very, very much involved in, you know, trying to raise awareness and being a part of the ship's preservation for the last 2 years. So, you know, I'm definitely not one of those people who is always like, we got to do something, and then doesn't do anything. Like, I go out there and I try to do something. Right now, I've got several plans in the works for how I can help the ship. And, you know, and it includes being part of a team, you know, so we are building up a team of people right now who can try to help the ship. But yeah, there are actually a few plans in the works. And so, yeah. But, yeah, the lifeboats was pretty sad. Let's see. J. Rod says, enjoyed your steam turbine video. Thank you so much. Hello, Thomas Brooks. Iron Legion says, what's your thought on Eppleton Hall? I don't think I know much about it. I don't think I've heard the name, but I can't picture it in my head. So I don't know. But it's pretty cool that it's, you know, still around at least. Daniel says, Alex, I always get confused with this. Is Lusitania older than Mauretania? I don't yet have the launch dates of the ship memorized, so I don't know. But they are relatively the same age, within a year, at least, within a year. But I don't have the launch dates memorized in my head. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll get rid of all of this. And then fill that with boiling water. Okay. Oh, I think my volume is... Yeah, my volume was on. Get rid of half of this. I just like topping off the teacup one more time just to keep it hot for when the tea is ready. Alright, so now we can put the tea in. Alright, and that can go on for 5 minutes, so 4:35 is when I'll check on it. Okay. Build Warship says, are there any fake funnels on the Queen Mary? Originally, when the ship was constructed, no, there were no fake funnels. All 3 funnels were designed to vent the exhaust gases from the boiler rooms and from the smoking room all the way at the back of the ship. Today, when the ship came to Long Beach, they did have to remove the funnels in order to access the boiler rooms to remove the boilers and other machinery. So in removing the original funnels, they were very damaged and just not up to preservation. So 3 new funnels were fashioned. They are complete replicas of the originals, made out of stainless steel. So they are made of stainless steel. Sorry. And yeah, there is a rumor that they are each 7 feet shorter than the originals, but I must state that that is a rumor. Take it with a grain of salt, because I have found no proof. You know, me and my other friend is I would definitely consider an expert on the Queen Mary. He and I have both researched, and we've never found evidence that those funnels are smaller than the originals. So I would take that with a grain of salt. But yes, they are replicas today. But the originals were, all 3 of them were used for exhausting smoke and gases. Alex in the seaside of Bulgaria says, what's your favorite French ocean liner? That would be the Ile de France of 1910 or 1912. I forget which year. One of the years it was launched, the other year it was put into service. I don't remember which ones were which. But yeah. Top impressive line says, Alex, a few weeks ago I acquired a 1-foot-long 3D printed model of the RMS Queen Mary from the Roller 3D. Pretty cool. I think I've heard of them. Doc says, I saw your video about the train layout saying you'll use resin. Can you talk about that process? It's one medium I haven't gotten to work with yet, but I'm very curious. I have never worked with resin either, but it's the only way to create realistic looking water for a train layout. So what I would have to do is, you probably have seen that on the river is open on both sides of the layout, on, you know, the left and right side. So that will have to be temporarily sealed with some, you know, easy release plastic. And it will have to be sealed very tight so the resin doesn't get through. But then you would have to paint the riverbed and decorate it the way the riverbed should look. That includes any debris that will be peeking out of the water has to be put in first. So everything is put in first, and then you can pour in the resin. It's going to be a clear resin, and you pour it up to... it's always best to work with thin layers of resin as opposed to a really thick block of it. And so for that reason, a lot of times for train layouts, the depth of the water is an illusion, because you, again, working with thick layers of resin can be quite a task. So this will be the same thing. It will be an illusion that'll look deeper than it really is. And you do that by the way you paint the riverbed. So you can paint the riverbed lighter shades of the same color towards the banks of the river, and then as you get closer to the center of the river, you paint it darker and darker colors until it's almost black. And then when you pour the resin in, it looks like the water's deeper than it really is. And the resin will take a few days to cure. And yeah, and then when the resin cures, it will be completely flat, and it will not look very realistic. It'll look like a river that's not a river. So what you do afterwards is you use a product called oh, I don't remember. I don't remember the product's name, but it's a product that you can create little realistic ripples and waves in the water, um, and it's like a gel, and so you just take some tools and form that into like various things. That's if you have like a really turbid like kind of water. Mine's not going to be like that. It's going to be mostly calm with just some slight ripples, and so you would take that same product and you can use different things like a straw and blow through the straw and make little tiny ripples in the water, which is what I'm going to do. And then you can come back when that dries with some white paint and paint some white caps on the water for areas that the water might be rushing more. And so just the layering of things like that helps to make the river look really realistic. But yeah, everything that will be in the river has to go in first before the resin goes in. I've never done it before. I've seen it done a million times. I'm just hoping that it goes smoothly, but most people who pour resin rivers, it never goes smoothly. There's always something, and you have to be, on your toes watching it, which is why a lot of people pour the resin river in the morning. That way they're awake the whole time to watch and see if anything happens. Because if there's a tiny little leak and that resin gets all over your carpet, you can say goodbye to your carpet. So, all right, so it is way past the time. That is a really hot lid. Burning my fingers. All right, now we just mix this around a little bit. I left the tea just a bit too long. It might taste a bit weird, but oh well. Okay, so now I put the lid back on. Okay, dump out the rest of this water. I've been looking forward to this tea all day. Okay, so and a half. Okay. Marco says, just saw your video of the Queen Mary and a part of your audiobook. You such a good storyteller. Thank you very much. Young Ship Historian says, hello, Alex. I have a question. You think you might know this, but the RMS Queen Mary swimming pool door on the other side, when you enter the pool, is it is, or I think you meant put is it, another half circle door? No, so no, so the entrance structure is a half circle, but the doors themselves aren't like half circle. They're flat doors that are inside the circle. So when you walk up to it, it's just a little vestibule, and there's like a double door, and they're designed to open both ways, actually, I think. But yeah, it's just a double door on the inside of the vestibule. So but inside the pool room, I don't remember if there's a half circular vestibule inside the pool room. I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't think there is. There could be, but I don't remember. Tweetsy Railroader says, good evening, Alex. Really glad to see your model railroad running in the background. Do you have plans to decorate your locomotives? Only slightly. They're still going to be colored black, but I want to accentuate parts that could be brass. So the boiler straps, the grab irons, things like that could be painted a brass color. And so that's what I plan to do, is paint them a brass color to help the locomotives stand out a bit more. But I don't want to make them too colorful. Chris says, do you like German steam locomotives pre-World War II and post-World War II? Not really. They look pretty industrial for me. I don't like that industrial look. Young Ship Historian says, Alex, I think I may have told you this, but my dad's friend sailed on the Queen Mary and then Queen Elizabeth. Is that cool? That is pretty cool. Not a lot of people can say that they've sailed on both. Alright, now for some tea. This looks like a very particularly strong tea. Yeah. Yeah, I brewed that for too long. 2 minutes too long. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, hello everyone. Young Ship Maritime Historian says, Alex, fun fact, the RMS Queen Mary and the RMS Queen Elizabeth telegraphs are the same design, except Queen Mary's is gold and Queen Elizabeth's are silver color. Interesting. Ken says, what does it take to get involved in the team you're putting together for Queen Mary? Well, first, we're in the super early planning stages. But I don't think it would take too much. So, when we do have... So, the original group will be me, my friend Steve Oblonski, who's been on the channel, and then his friend and my friend, Robin Jacobs. You know, the three of us are working on reviving the Yarrow project and possibly doing some more things for the ship. But once the three of us are able to establish this group and kind of figure stuff out, because, you know, we want to look and see what we can do, but I'm trying not to reveal too much because not everything is available to the public yet. But yeah, so yeah, once we have our plan figured out, then we'll be looking for people who can help contribute to the group and see if we can, you know, make some changes and some differences for the Queen Mary. You know, and then I have some ideas on the side for what I can do outside of that group to help the Queen Mary. But I need to run that across some of my friends first to see if, you know, they think it's a good idea and that kind of thing, you know. Yeah. But I will... As soon as we know what our game plan is, what we plan to do, and how we plan to go about it, then I'll be telling everybody on the channel, and then from that point, we can decide like when we want to bring in other people and expand this group with a bunch of professionals and stuff. So that'd be pretty cool. So I'll let you know. Ozzy says, awesome job on painting. Thank you very much. Historic Production says, I was hoping you were going to answer my question about the Britannic never became a passenger liner. I didn't see a question about that. I thought there was a statement, something about like Britannic never became a passenger liner, so I skipped over it because I thought it was just a statement. But I don't. If you can ask your question again, then I will see if I can answer it. But I will tell you right now, I don't know that much about the Olympic class ships. I try to avoid that subject because there are way more people out there that know way more than I do about those ships, and they can run circles around me with their knowledge to the point where I feel like it's just pointless for me to answer any questions because there's always a contradiction. So, let's see. Tyler Frederick says Ile de France was 1927. Maybe I'm thinking of SS France then. I think I'm thinking of SS France because the one I like is not from 1927. It's from like 1910 or 1912. So I think SS France. Alex in the Seaside, Bulgaria says, I have another question. What are your thoughts on the SS Andrea Doria and the RMS Aquitania? I can't say anything about SS Andrea Doria. I know absolutely nothing about it. But RMS Aquitania, you know, a lot of people ask me what are my thoughts on these ships, but I don't know what they specifically mean. Because I feel like I always answer the same way, which is, it's great, it's cool. I don't know what people are asking. So if you could be more specific, I would love to answer your question correctly. But I don't know what people mean by what are my thoughts, you know. So yeah, if you could re-ask the question in a more specific way. Top Impressive Line says, Alex, one of the first ocean liners to be powered by steam turbine was the Tasman. I've heard of Tasmanian, but Tasman, I've never heard of that. Trans-Tasman ship, SS Mahino, entered service in 1905 and still exists today, but she is currently an abandoned ship. That is pretty cool. The Iron Legion says, have you, or would you even want to visit the Titanic Museum in Tennessee? Not really, no. I'd rather see the one in Belfast. Some of these Titanic museums, they look a bit too much designed for kids for my taste. Like they don't look all that serious a lot of times. They don't have very large collections. Sometimes like there's one in the Midwest somewhere, I think, and it looks very like a theme park. Yeah. But the one in Belfast, if I ever get to the UK, that is the one I'm going to visit. Historic Productions, that sounds pretty cool about the resin art. Good afternoon, Rayanne. These biscuits taste old. They're not old, though. Chris Surface about the coffee and tea. Yeah, I know that. I used to be a Star Trek fan when I was a kid. Not as much anymore, but... Patrick McCarty says, do you use any flex track on that layout? Yes, the entire layout is flex track. I shaped it myself and then glued it in place. Daniel says, I saw in the news today that the Astoria, formerly Stockholm, is being scrapped after all these decades. Yes, I read that last night. I was going to bed and I saw that in my news feed about the Astoria finally being scrapped. The Astoria, I don't think, has been in service since the pandemic started. And, you know, it was too expensive to... You know, as the ship gets older, it gets more expensive to maintain. It was becoming too expensive to maintain. Such a small ship. The profit margins are slimmer. You know, all that stuff. So, it had a lot going against it. It is pretty sad. Modcat, I didn't skip your question, I just didn't see it. Why did they have to remove the Queen Mary's machinery? Because originally, the whole reason why Long Beach purchased the Queen Mary was because they planned to use it for its boiler rooms to turn it into a museum of the sea. It was going to be done by Jacques Cousteau. And so... the museum was going to take up the entire underside of the ship. The whole thing. It was going to be huge. It was going to be like a theme park inside of the ship. And in anticipation of that, they thought, well, we could construct a building to house this whole thing, but it'll be extremely expensive. Or we could buy the most famous ship in the world, the Queen Mary, which will be much cheaper, and build it in there, and it'll act doubly as a hotel and a tourist attraction. They chose to buy the Queen Mary. So, as part of the preparation for that Museum of the Sea, they ripped out like 90% of all of the machinery below D-deck. And so, the problem was that as things were going underway, the Museum of the Sea idea, they no longer had enough money for it. Their funding just wasn't there. So they really only built the museum into like a combination of two different machinery spaces on the ship. The rest of them were left empty. Today, the area where the museum used to be is now a convention space, which is also not in use currently. So, yeah. That is why they removed the machinery spaces. Sniper Goofy, yes, I saw your comment about how your name is Alex, too. Sorry, everybody, I can't read everybody's comments, or else we would be here forever. So I do have to skip over comments that don't need to be read out loud. But it doesn't necessarily mean... If it's a question, I will try to answer the question. But if it's something like, you know, my name is Alex, I don't need to read that out loud. I can read it and then just kind of go past it, but... let's see. Carter Asher says, do you have a Queen Mary model? No, because I cannot find a company that sells a really high quality Queen Mary model in 1/350th scale. It just doesn't exist. So I don't have a Queen Mary model. Alex in the Seaside, Bulgaria says, okay, I wanted to know what you think of RMS Aquitania's interiors and her career. I'm the only ocean liner fan in my family, and the Aquitania is my favorite ship, so I want to know what others think about it. Her interiors are absolutely beautiful. I actually prefer Aquitania's interiors over Titanic's interiors. Very beautiful. I know that the first class main lounge is one area that I would definitely hang out all day if I was sailing aboard the ship. As for the career, a fantastic career, both in World War I and World War II. That is, a really rare quality for a ship. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's a really fantastic ship. I haven't done as much research on the Aquitania as I have the Mauretania. Because I'm very new to ocean liners. Not a lot of people know this, but I only just got into ocean liners in the year 2020 when my obsession with the Queen Mary began. So, as I read books and stuff, I learn just little tidbits here and there about the ocean liners. Iron Legion says, do you like or do you know... Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Do you like or how do you feel about the Cunard's Britannia-class steamships? Well, going back to my original comment, I'm still new to ocean liners. I was not aware that there was a Britannia-class. I knew that there was a Britannia. But I did not know that there was more than one ship of that class. I will say, though, the Britannia is pretty neat. It's not anything particularly special, aside from the fact that it was, one of the first ocean liners to go across the ocean on a regular schedule. But it's okay. It's kind of too... That liner is from an era far too early for my taste. I really like the liners that are from the 1890s through to the 1930s. Iron Legion says, why does the Queen Mary's propellers look sort of scary? Why did they remove 3 of them? I don't think there's anything scary about the propeller. They just look like propellers to me. I don't think they're... I don't I don't know why someone would think they're scary. They're just propellers. But as for why they were removed... First and foremost, the ship doesn't need them, and she hasn't needed them. If you think about it, if they were still on the ship all this time, no one would have seen them. So they were removed so that way people could see them. So 3 of them that were removed were made into display pieces that were put around Southern California. And there was a spare propeller that was also removed from the ship. The spare propeller was melted down to create, what do you call them? Commemorative merchandise. Stuff you could buy when the Queen Mary came to Long Beach. And so a lot of that commemorative merchandise is still being sold on eBay. But yeah, that's why they removed the propellers. So I don't have a problem my tongue is getting tied. I don't have a problem with the fact that they removed the propellers. Because again, when would you ever see them? They would be covered in murky ocean water that you can't see. The only one you can see is in the propeller box, which is located on the outer port side propeller. So that one's at least on display so you can see it, and it's still attached to its, propeller shaft. But yeah, that's why they removed it. Hello, Rena. Looking at a certain... Let's see. Young Ship Maritime Historian says, Alex, what is in the side of the stern of the Queen Mary? Oh, what is inside of the stern of the Queen Mary? So, let's see. It's hard to... I don't have anything to point at. So, there are a few different levels. If we... This is what I can reach. This is the Queen Elizabeth's stern. But... essentially, the top area should be A deck. Actually, let me count that. That's promenade, main. Yeah, A deck. So that's A deck on the top, and that was available to third class passengers to get some air and stuff. I'm trying to think. Beneath that was B deck, and in B deck it's still there, is the isolation wards, which was like a hospital on the ship, except it wasn't officially the ship's hospital. It was used as an area to store and treat people who needed to be isolated from the rest of the ship if they had, some kind of ailment or disease that could easily be spread, something that the U.S. immigration would not like, then they could be kept there away from the rest of the passengers, and they could be treated there if they needed treatment. It acted partially as a hospital. So yeah, B deck had the isolation wards. Then underneath that, post-war, it would be called R deck. And on the R deck level, there was cabin steward accommodations. So it was like crew accommodations for like the cabin stewards and stuff like that. Possibly even the tourist class stewards as well. Then underneath that would have been C deck. And C deck had more crew accommodations and linen storage and that kind of stuff. Let's see. And then underneath C deck would have been D deck, which D deck had more. It wasn't crew accommodation. It was like crew facilities. Yeah, crew facilities. And then beneath that was E deck. Let's try to see if I remember this correctly. And E deck, it had... See, I'm trying to think in my head because one of those areas is the steering gear, and I'm thinking it was on... I'm thinking the steering gear was on E deck. Yeah. Yeah, the steering gear was on E deck. So the steering gear sat right above the rudder and turned the rudder. And that was the most sternmost part of the ship. So it ended at E deck, at the steering gear room. You would have to go a bit further forward to continue down into the ship. So I guess I hope that answers your question. Jacob says that's quite a long train on the layout. It's only 6 cars. It would be 2 box cars, 1 cattle car, 2 gondolas, and 1 caboose. I lost track of where I was. Okay, here we go. Eric Brooking says, many people seem to not know that the observation bar was expanded across the promenade deck after arriving at Long Beach. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. So, I've had people ask me, they say, Alex, I've been on the Queen Mary. Why doesn't the promenade wrap around the ship? You know, that would be really cool if it did, so people didn't have to, like, go, you know, across the ship to get... And my answer is, it used to. So the promenade deck used to wrap around the front of the superstructure of the ship, going around the observation bar. I have a photo of Walt Disney standing in that very area. So he's leaning on railing, which was attached to the bulkhead that separated the promenade from the observation bar. But when the ship came to Long Beach, they were looking at ways of making the ship more profitable, and they thought, you know, we could expand the observation bar by just getting rid of the promenade forward of it and then expanding into the promenade. And so today, when you go to the observation bar, you have the high ceilings, but as soon as you cross the threshold of the area that has lower ceilings, that's where the promenade used to be, wrapping around the front of the observation bar. But yeah. Chris says, my favorite Cunard ocean liner is the RMS Aquitania. It's definitely a beautiful ship on the inside. I don't like the way the Aquitania looks on the outside, but the inside is very beautiful. Let's see. Alex on the seaside of Bulgaria says, so you're new in the ocean liner community. How did you get interested in ocean liners? For me, like many others, it was the 1997 movie. A lot of people assume that for me it was the Titanic movie. The Titanic movie is what got me interested in looking at the Titanic. But I never did any research on the Titanic in, you know, the 2 decades since then. So it wasn't Titanic that got me interested in ocean liners. It was the Queen Mary. Now, I had visited the Queen Mary a few times in my life, but as a young person, it just never interested me. Didn't catch my attention. But it wasn't until, you know, as a, you know, full-grown adult, in the year 2020, it was January 2020, before the pandemic hit, my friends were like, hey, let's go hang out on the Queen Mary. And I thought, oh, I don't want to go to the Queen Mary. Like, it doesn't, you know, doesn't appeal to me. And they said, well, we're going whether or not you're going. So I'm like, okay, I'll go. And I thought, at the time, my channel only told the history of Disneyland, so I thought maybe I could try to make something out of it. You know, the Walt Disney Company did lease the Queen Mary from the city of Long Beach for a period of 4 years, so I could talk about what happened during the lease. And I did some quick Google searching before I went to the ship, and I was suddenly blown away. There was all these things about the ship I didn't realize. And then the day we went to the ship, you know, I was looking at it from the outside. I'm like, all right, you know, pretty cool. As soon as I stepped aboard, it was like a light switch just flicked, and all of a sudden I fell in love with it. I was looking around, and despite how aged it had become and how, you know, dilapidated some areas of the ship have become, there was a beauty underneath that I could still see. And I realized, I'm like, this ship needs help. But with help, it looks like the most amazing ship in existence, you know? So, yeah, that got me into the Queen Mary. And then in researching the Queen Mary, I learned more about the Queen Elizabeth. I learned more about the QE2. I learned more about RMS Mauretania and Lusitania. And so from there, my interest slowly is growing. It's not like every ocean liner is my favorite ocean liner. I'm very selective about what ocean liners I actually really like, and I'm still learning about a lot of them. But as part of my learning process, I try to make videos about the different ships and liners in an effort to learn more about them and then solidify that memory with a video. So yeah, that's how I got into ocean liners. Ocean Liner Production says, have you heard of RMS Berengaria? He was the first built by Germany as SS Imperator in World War II, or World War I, I'm sorry. Then to USS Imperator, For a few months in 1919, she was scrapped in 1938. A beautiful ship before and after. Berengaria, I have heard of it. I've heard of it being the Imperator. I don't know much about it aside from that, yeah. I haven't seen too many images of the interior. Let me pour some more tea before it gets cold. It's still pretty warm, thankfully. I don't like cold tea. I'm sure nobody likes cold black tea. So... Ozzy says, are they still going to move the submarine next to the Queen Mary? No plans have been made, but yes, they are interested in moving it and getting it out of there. But, again, no plans have been made. Right now, the #1 priority is getting the Queen Mary back up and running as a tourist attraction. Because, you know, there's a very limited amount of money going around. Very limited. And so, you know, you have to prioritize. You know, you have to go, okay, well, as cool as that is, we need the ship open so we can make more money, and then maybe when we make more money, we can get rid of the submarine, you know. So that's kind of the thought process, is just get the ship open and running so we can do other things we need to do. Iron Legion says, would you ever buy something made from the Queen Mary's propeller? No, but not because of principle. Really, just more because I don't really like what they made out of it. Like, I don't need earrings. I don't need, you know, rings. I don't need hair clips. I don't need an ashtray. Like, I don't need any of that stuff. So I don't really want it. You know. I do own a Queen Mary ashtray that it's not made from the propeller. It was sold aboard the ship in the 1930s, actually. So I have one from the 1930s. And it's a beautiful ashtray. It's a butterfly wing ashtray. So it's got like this blue butterfly wing design on the inside, made of actual butterfly wings. And yeah, but I use that for display. But even then, I don't have much room. Like, I live in a small studio apartment. Most of the things I own that I want to display are in boxes because I just don't have the room to display them. So yeah, I try not to overload myself with artifacts and things, you know. I already don't have room for it. Let's see. Ozzy says, on the Queen Mary, the mail room, is it in front of the ship or the back of the ship? Queen Mary's mailroom was forward on the ship, so it was closer to the cargo holds. I don't remember what deck it was on. It might have been on our deck or C deck, but I don't remember. But it was forward on the ship, closer to the bow. Let's see. Oh. Rena says, I would drink cold black tea. You're funny. Spyro says, reason why a lot of people be saying that the color looks scary or haunted because of the eerie, creepy lighting that is strong, signed up to the ship's screw propeller. I think I know what you're saying. So the people think it's scary looking because of the way they lit the propeller in the propeller room. I can see that, yeah. I mean, but some people also have submechanophobia, which is a fear of man-made things underwater. So that might play into it. You know, submechanophobia, nobody ever heard of it when I was a kid, but, you know, nowadays that word goes around a lot to identify something that a lot of people just couldn't explain in the past. And so, yeah, yeah, so, but I mean, I look at the propeller, I'm not afraid. Like, I look at it, and to me, it's just a propeller, you know. It looks pretty cool, though, I think, because the tank that it's in is so dark that you actually can't tell where the bottom is. And it is a tank, folks. It's not like, you know, it's not like it's just open salt water. It's in a freshwater tank. The tank was built around the propeller in order to encase it. and keep it in fresh water so it doesn't degrade as quickly. Spyro says, by the way, Alex, why is that weird, creepy lighting on the ship's screw propeller? Why don't they have better lighting on the ship's screw propeller? Because they don't want you to see, you know, like I was just saying about the tank around it. They don't want you to see the walls of the tank. The main attraction of that room is the propeller. So that's why it's only got specific lights on the propeller itself. They don't want you to see the tank. So let's see. Carter Asher says, I wish Titanic never sank. I would say the same thing, except if it wasn't for Titanic sinking, we wouldn't have a lot of the safety features we have on ships today. Well, then again, there's been a lot of sinkings since then, so one of them would have asked for it, but yeah. Or called for it, but yeah. Historic Production says, Alex, if the Queen Mary stays in excellent condition, how long will she last for like a few more decades? So let's just say right now I waved a magic wand and the Queen Mary was in pristine condition and we never touched her again. We never like did more paint touch-ups, did nothing. She would probably last about 25 years without any type of intervention. But of course, nobody ever does that. If you have a ship that's in pristine condition, you do allot an annual amount of money for maintenance. So, yeah. But yeah, I would say 25 years is the maximum because she does need repainting and stuff like that on the upper levels, you know, waterproofing for the rain and that kind of thing, you know. So, but yeah, hope that answers your question. Alex in Seaside of Bulgaria says, that's great. So you're different from most when it comes to becoming interested in ocean liners. Do you like the RMS Adriatic of 1907? Personally, I like her. She had lots of new additions. I've heard the name Adriatic, but I can't picture it in my head, so I don't know. Ocean Liner Production says, I also finished the Queen Mary, Queen of the Queens book. It's an amazing book, and I can see why you love it so much. I learned a lot about her. The first class pool area, her final years. It's neat. Yep, it's a really neat book. There's a few things here and there that aren't accurate, but, I mean, for the most part, it's a very accurate book. Let's see. Patrick McCarty says, is your train DCC or just DC? It's just DC, but I do keep more than one locomotive on the layout, and I'm able to do that through the use of isolated block zones. They're isolated from the main power and can be switched. The zones can be switched on with simple switches I have on the thing here, just beyond my reach. But yeah, it is DC, analog. Patrick McCarty says manual turnouts. Yes, manual turnouts. I did think about doing powered turnouts, you know, installing them. I still could if I wanted to, but it seems like kind of a large task. I do have 6 turnouts on the whole layout, and it's a bit daunting. But there are times where I do wish that I had powered turnouts, only because I can't reach over the layout all the time to you know, operate the turnouts. But yeah, it just seems so overwhelming to want to install powered turnouts. Iron Legion says, if you had a chance or choice, would you like to own an artifact from a shipwreck? And if so, from what wreck and what would you want to own? I wouldn't mind owning an artifact from a shipwreck as long as it was taken in a way that, like, as long as it wasn't like some random collector diving down there and collecting something. As long as it was like a large company that had approval from, you know, multiple nations or whatever, then yeah, I wouldn't mind owning an artifact from a ship. As to what ship? I don't know. Well, I mean, I guess the answer is pretty simple. I guess Titanic, I guess, because on eBay they were selling like little lumps of coal that were taken from the debris field of the Titanic shipwreck, and I almost bought one because they weren't that expensive at the time. I just didn't get the chance to buy it, and then they went out. They were done. So I was like, oh man, missed it. But you know, I'm sure they sell those little lumps of coal in every Titanic museum. Like, I saw them when I went to the traveling Titanic museum in California, and I almost bought them then, but I went and bought a replica dinner plate or cake plate from first class. But yeah, I guess that's what it would be if I had to choose a shipwreck. That, or maybe, you know, if there was anything left on the sea floor from the wreckage of the Oceanic or Carpathia. Those are two ships I really do like. Oceanic and Carpathia. Yeah. Chris says we should give the submarine back to Russia. I mean, yeah, they'd probably use it for their military in the condition it's already in. That's pretty funny. Carter Asher says, I wish Titanic never sank. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't know how to say your name, but Rated R says, did you know that the Three Stooges were actually on the Queen Mary at one point? Yeah, I saw a photograph of them. Let's see. Carrie says, hi, Alex. Are any of the Queen Mary's engines or boilers on display somewhere, or the boilers from other ships? So none of the Queen Mary's boilers, turbine, or turbo-electric generators, none of that exists on the ship anymore. They were all scrapped in the early 1970s. And 2 of the 4 engines that ran the Queen Mary were also scrapped. The other 2 engines, because there were 2... So let me just put it this way. There were 2 engine rooms, a forward and aft engine room. And the forward engine room had 2 engines. The aft engine room had 2 engines. Each engine drove a propeller, so 4 propellers on the Queen Mary. The forward engine room was gutted as part of their thing to make space for the giant Museum of the Sea that they were planning to build that never got built in all those rooms. The aft engine room stayed. They were going to remove it as part of the process, but by the time, and this is really lucky, by the time they got around to preparing to gut the aft engine room, that's when word got out that there was not enough money to build the entire Museum of the Sea. So they decided, instead of spending more money on gutting more space, we'll just stop right here. And so they did stop, and then the Queen Mary's engine room stayed for a while. It was not touched. I don't remember how many years. I think it was just a couple of years after the ship opened that it just remained as is. But then eventually someone came in and turned it into an area that could be toured. So to this day, you can actually go aboard the Queen Mary when the Queen Mary reopens fully. You could go aboard the Queen Mary, go to the aft section of the ship, and you can go down into the original last remaining engine room on the Queen Mary. And you could walk around and see how it worked and stuff like that. And then there was also the shaft alley. So it's an alleyway that is just aft of the engine room. You are down at the bottommost level of the ship, and you can see the 4 propeller shafts that went and extended out towards the end of the ship. And then you can go up a level up 2 levels, I should say. You can go up 2 levels and see the steering gear room. So it's the room with all the machinery that turns the rudder. Very cool room. So yeah, that you can see on the ship today. That has remained mostly intact, and you can see all of it there. So pretty neat. I'm so glad that they were able to at least keep that instead of just removing everything from the ship. But no, you can't see the boilers. You can't see the turbo generators. The Yarrow project, which is something I'm currently involved in, was originally a plan to bring back one or two of the boiler rooms and turn them into essentially giant tourist science centers. You could go in there, see full recreations of the Queen Mary's Yarrow boilers, and it wouldn't just be display. You could interact with the exhibits and learn about how the Queen Mary operated. And so that was an idea that was being passed around in the 2010s, and that idea never came to fruition, but we're currently in the process of looking at how we can bring it back. So that is the Yarrow project that I'm involved in. Carrie also says photos are amazing. I would have loved to see them when they were removed. What? Okay. Chris says, the movie that got me into RMS Titanic was Raise the Titanic. I saw that movie with my grandma. That was a really good movie at the time. It's, it's old today, but yeah. Patrick says they are spending $50 million on Battleship Texas. Last time it was in dry dock about 25 years ago. Yeah, I saw the video of Texas being moved and then placed on a floating dry dock, I think as part of just like power washing the hull. Alex of the seaside of Bulgaria says, I see that your favorite ship is the Queen Mary, so you know a lot about it. Do you think she's haunted? Personally, I don't, although I do believe in ghosts. I just don't think there are on the Queen Mary. I'm a lot like you, except I would have to disagree. So, I'm a lot like you in the sense that I do believe in ghosts because I feel like I've personally seen and experienced ghost hauntings in the past, and I'm a pretty skeptical person. And part of that skepticality, if that's a word, is that the problem with a lot of haunted places is they make up a lot of big whoppers of stories. Just stories that are so out there, they are not believable. And Queen Mary is one of those places. The Disney company came in 1989. Back then, the Queen Mary was just a simple operating hotel and convention center. But the maintenance on it was being cut after the previous leaseholder, Jack Rather, died. Jack Rather loved the Queen Mary. He used to be a passenger on it, him and his wife. Jack Rather died. His company continued leasing the ship from the city of Long Beach, but they just slowly cut on maintenance. The maintenance was going down. People's experience on the ship, they weren't liking it as much. Disney came in after purchasing the Jack Rather company, awarding Disney the contract to the lease of the Queen Mary. Disney said, oh great, now we have this big ship we don't want. What are we gonna do? How are we gonna make this make money? They said, oh, let's just do the easy thing. Let's just, call it haunted and start selling it as a haunted ship. Because that is really the easy way out for a lot of like small haunted houses and stuff like that you see in random cities and stuff like that. A lot of the easy way out for them is just calling it a haunted place and then, selling tickets. So that's what they did for the Queen Mary. Problem is that a haunted house works because a house is, even the biggest house is a lot smaller than the Queen Mary. The Queen Mary is 1,019 feet long. She's almost a quarter of a mile long. That is huge. Absolutely ginormous. So you can't operate a ship entirely, that ship that large entirely on a haunted house thing. But they tried. And they made up a lot of stories about a little girl who drowned in the swimming pool. There was never any record of a girl drowning in the swimming pools, or any drownings at all, especially since the fact that children were not allowed near the Queen Mary swimming pools during the ship's service, and the swimming pools were never open for hotel guests, so it certainly didn't happen during the hotel years. So there's a lot of fake stories. But let me tell you, though, there are a lot of stories from ordinary people who've been on the Queen Mary, and they had experiences that simply just couldn't be explained at the time. Yeah, I've heard some of them from some of my own friends who've had experiences that even I have to say, you know, I don't know, I can't explain it. There was the guy's probably watching right now, but there is a channel called Skadoo, Skadoo. If you go to his channel, he's got a pretty cool channel. He has many just quiet, no talking walkthroughs of the Queen Mary. Okay, pretty cool. But in one of them, he goes down to our deck, right outside the first class swimming pool, right outside the first class main restaurant. He's just in the lobby there, and he's just walking around the ship. That's what he does. He films it, walks around the ship, and when he gets to the end of the lobby and is getting ready to turn around to go back, as he turns, you can see a cabinet door along the wall suddenly unlocks and opens. This is a cabinet door designed to click shut because the ship was designed to roll in rough weather, and you don't want cabinet doors opening and shutting at random. So this cabinet door was designed to click shut. So it would have taken some force to open that cabinet. But the other thing, too, is that it opened. It wasn't like it was an open cabinet that shut. And the reason why is I think that's weird is because the Queen Mary is listing 2 degrees to port. They purposely tilt the ship to port at 2 degrees in order to help drain rainwater on the ship into a city collection system. They don't want the ordinary scuppers on the ship to just drain into the ocean. They want to control what goes into the ocean by draining it into the city first. So the ship is listing 2 degrees to port, but he was on the starboard side. So those doors would not have opened, they would have shut, if anything. So that's one of those things where I was kind of like, that's weird. And even when he filmed it, because I left him a comment, and I think he commented back that it was just not something he expected, you know, so it was just weird, you know, like even he was weirded out by it. So that's one of those things where I'm kind of like, that is unexplainable. So yeah, it was pretty weird. So things like that. So when people tell me that they were on the Queen Mary, they felt someone tap them on the shoulder or call their name or something like that, it's those stories I am more likely to believe than the stories of someone came into my room in the middle of the night and strangled me and then disappeared. And I'm like, that is a ridiculous story. So yeah, sorry I went on a little tangent, but I always talk about that. But there are a lot of stories of people saying, oh, you can hear tapping on the hull. You can hear, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know, that's from the hull. You know, anybody who's ever been on a ship with rivets, a ship that's been riveted together, they make tapping noises constantly. They're just constantly flexing. The other thing, too, is when people are on the port side and, the doors to their cabins or closets open, and they're like, oh my gosh, who's doing that? Remember I was saying about the ship tilting 2 degrees to port. If you're on the port side and your cabinet doors are opening, your closets are opening, and you have no explanation, that's why. It's because the ship is tilting. So that's part of the explanation for things like that. But Iron Legion says, just curious, why does Carpathia look like a mushy mess? Or why does Lusitania look like a bent floppy ship? I have not seen photos or images of the wrecks of those ships, so I have no idea. Hello, Malibu Company. Iron Legion says, do you think the rotting Raise the Titanic prop should be restored? For context, Google Raise the Titanic prop. She's in real bad shape. I'm doing a live stream right now, so I can't Google it. But Ken says, if I could have anything from a shipwreck, it would be the gold from the SS Republic. Interesting. Actually, yeah, the gold would be pretty nice to have. You could definitely sell that for a pretty penny. Yeah, Malibu, I know. I was just thinking the same thing. Like, you came in just as we were having this conversation again. So, yeah. SP Greg says, hi, Alex. Getting back to the Queen Mary's lifeboats. Yes, they were big. 36 feet long, 12 feet wide, 5 feet tall. Not something you could transport easily on your highways. Nope, definitely not. It would have required a wide load permit for each lifeboat. I know, because when I was part of QMI, we were looking into acquiring at least one lifeboat to try to store it somewhere. And it would have required us to get a permit in the middle of a time when there wasn't enough truck drivers. We still have a truck driver shortage around, the continental U.S. Or I should say North America in general is having a truck driver shortage. And even then it was worse because we were in the middle of the pandemic and all that, and so there was just no truck drivers to transport the lifeboats. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Chris says the USS Iowa had a lot of death, especially in Turret 2. Almost every ship has some deaths on board. That's true. Every ship has some deaths on board. Queen Mary's deaths have been well documented by Cunard. They were meticulous at documenting everything that happened on their ships. One death was caused by somebody falling down the third-class staircase, landing on the R-deck landing, and they died that way. That was from the ship rolling and pitching in rough weather. And there is another death that happened from a similar situation, falling down the stairs, but it did not say which stairs they fell. I'm also going to assume third-class staircase. That was one of the most dangerous staircases on the ship during rough weather. Aside from maybe the first-class forward staircase, that was also forward enough on the ship that it would have caused especially some bad footing, going down or up the stairs. Rena says, yeah, I don't want to go back to the USS Iowa alone. A guy I know who volunteers on the ship said his coworker said he saw a ghost on the ship. Yeah. I do believe in ghosts. Yeah, I think, as long as the story doesn't seem so out there, I'm more inclined to believe it. But yeah, yeah. So when people ask me, is the Queen Mary haunted? I'm kind of like, yeah, it is. But just not like the big epic stories that people often describe. But yeah, small things like seeing people and stuff like that. I was in the Shaft Alley, and I even said this in a video I made, that I thought I saw someone walking along the original catwalk that was to my left. And when I turned my head to look, I didn't see anybody there. And I was filming at that moment too, so I had turned the camera right as that happened to see if I could, capture it on camera. I didn't see it, and it didn't show up in the camera either, so it was possibly just me, but I felt like I thought I saw something there, But yeah, pretty weird. But I don't think the ship is haunted by anything malicious, that's for sure. Like, I know a lot of people are inclined to believe that when they see a ghost, they should be afraid of it, like it's something evil, but I don't think all ghosts are evil. If the Queen Mary is haunted, it's haunted by happy spirits, because the ship was a very happy ship. I know that the marketing of the Queen Mary is constantly doom and gloom. It's like, oh, the ship was this, it's a portal. It's a portal for the dark in the spirit realm, and the ship was a very happy ship. People loved being aboard. It was a fun time. The ship was calm and relaxing, except for the storms, but the ship was calm and relaxing for people. It wasn't like it was just some city bus going across the ocean, it was a place of gaiety and laughter and good times. So I don't think the Queen Mary is haunted with anything malicious, you know, so kind of weird that way. Malibu Company. Oh, good luck with dinner. Let's see. Iron Legion says, do you wish the Queen Elizabeth was saved, or if parts of her were saved? I mean, I wish the Queen Elizabeth never burned, but parts of her were saved. I mean, you can go to New York. There's a building in New York that has a little marquee that has the Q and E letters from the Queen Elizabeth, as well as some notes and things from the mayor of New York at the time and stuff like that. If you go to the city of Torrance in California, there's the other Q and E letters from the Queen Elizabeth, and also her spare anchor. So the QE's spare anchor is in the city of Torrance at a building. What street is it? Oh, I don't remember the street name, but it's in the city of Torrance. And right now, that building is being renovated. So there might be construction walls, but when the building is finished being renovated, I think you should be able to walk right up on the sidewalk and see them, you know, the letters and the anchor. So there are artifacts saved from Queen Elizabeth. Some of my tea set here next to me, some of these items are from the Queen Elizabeth. So yeah, some pretty cool stuff. Yeah. Let me read more. Let's see here. Oceana Production says, if the RMS Queen Elizabeth never caught fire and was at Port Everglades a little longer, for example, 1975, and she was moved to another city for restoration and hotel purposes, what city you'd think? I have a feeling a lot of people would say, oh, she would have gone to New York, but no. I don't think Queen Elizabeth or Queen Mary would have ever gone to New York. It's just too expensive. I mean, I know. In a wonderful dream world, we would say that either Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth would have eventually made it to New York and been a super successful hotel. But the thing is that is if everything goes really well. And the thing is that this is real life. Stuff rarely goes according to plan. And New York is a very expensive place to permanently dock a ship, especially a ship of that proportion. I think if Queen Elizabeth stayed a little bit longer in Port Everglades, she might have been... I don't know, because even in that scenario, she still would have been purchased by C.Y. Tung, and he would have still tried to convert her to C.Y.'s university. Yeah. Yeah, I think even in that scenario, she still would have been purchased by C.Y. Tung. Let's see. Iron Legion says, are Queen Mary's horns original? If not, where are the originals? Yes, the Queen Mary's horns are original horns. They're called Typhon whistles. So even though they are horns, they are traditionally called whistles. So yeah, the Queen Mary originally had 3 whistles, and I actually have a short video about this. So after the stream, if you want to see it, if you go to the homepage of my channel and scroll all the way down to the shorts list, you will see one called The Voice of Queen Mary. That one is about her whistles. But yes, the Queen Mary had 3 whistles, 2 on the forward funnel and 1 on the middle funnel. They were all used for the various purposes, you know, announcing departure, announcing arrival, warnings, sirens, that kind of thing. They ran off of steam. Each horn was about 7 feet long and about 4 feet tall. And they could be heard up to 10 miles away. They were each tuned to a to 55 hertz, and the note was a minor, yeah. And yeah, they were pretty loud. But yeah, so when the Queen Mary came to Long Beach, she still had all three of them, even until, I would say, in the maybe the late 80s, early 1990s, the third whistle, which was sitting on the middle funnel, was looking a bit shabby, and they had the idea to remove it from the funnel to save it, so it didn't get worse. So they removed the third whistle and brought it down into the museum lobby of the engineering spaces on the ship. It was on display there for many more years, and when the Queen Mary 2 was being constructed in the late 1990s/early 2000s, it was decided finally that the Queen Mary 2 would, or Cunard, would borrow the third whistle for an extended period of time. It was what they call an indefinite loan. And so what happened was they shipped the third whistle to New York. The third whistle was then put on board as freight on the QE2, so Queen Elizabeth II. It sailed over the ocean to France. And then in France, it was... I want to say it was Le Havre. I can't pronounce the name, but it wasn't Cherbourg. I don't think they do Cherbourg anymore. They do like Le Havre or something like that. But it was then disembarked in France and then taken down to Chantier de l'Atlantique, the place where they construct the ships. And that's where they were constructing the Queen Mary 2. And so now the third whistle is been fully restored, and it is in operation on the Queen Mary 2. And if you watch videos of the Queen Mary 2, you can tell the difference between the horns, because there's a replica on there as well. The replica also works. But you can tell the difference between the two horns, because the original horn is a much deeper note. It's at 55 hertz. The replica is at a required 75 hertz, which sounds higher pitched to the ear. So yeah, the other two whistles are still aboard the Queen Mary. One of them is not currently functional. It was functional when the ship was opened first as a hotel. They currently only operate one of the whistles, and they operate several times per day every day. But yeah, so that is where all the whistles are. Carter Asher says, did they put Queen Mary at sea during the filming? The filming... If you're asking about a specific movie... Well, there were a lot of movies filmed on the Queen Mary, especially in the years when she was at sea. Let me just put it this way. After the ship retired, they never took her out to sea for filming a movie. So I'll put it that way. There's an explosion in the turret that killed 30 sailors. Wow. Patrick says, what was the Queen Mary's route? The Queen Mary had 2 North Atlantic routes. She did do the North Atlantic run. That was what she was designed for. She traveled between the Ambrose lightship off the coast of Ireland all the way to New York. And that was considered the North Atlantic run. Now, there were 2 North Atlantic runs. There was a northerly route for the summer, And then there was a southerly route for the winter. They did that to avoid icebergs. And so, yeah. Yeah. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I could add to that, but I can't think of anything else. Reina says, "Oh my God, really? I'm going to check out the anchor from Queen Elizabeth." Yeah. It's in New York and then Torrance. So there's it's in 2 different cities. Modcat says, "How did the Queen Elizabeth catch fire?" Tyler says Mao ordered her burned. Okay, that is not an official answer. No, nobody really knows. It was definitely arson, that's for sure. It was some type of arson. Now some people say it was arson like someone literally lit a match. Some people say it was arson like because someone intentionally left something running, or I don't know. There's also theories that it wasn't arson at all, that, you know, some kind of electrical extension cord they had during the restoration of the ship had short-circuited, overheated, and then caught fire. I will tell you the most likely route was that there were anti-imperialists, people who did not like the British Empire encroaching in on China. And they supposedly boarded the ship, and they had lit fires in several areas of the ship. And so it was supposedly anti-imperialists. But it is important for me to say that, yeah, Tyler. But, I mean, that's the thing, is every author and stuff like that, they have their own idea of what happened according to what they think is most likely. But I don't think there is any proof, any like solid proof that it was definitely arson or anti-imperialists. So I don't know, but because I'm not the one that did all the research on it. You know, I have to reference my friend Kevin Anthony from the Steamship Historical Society. He has done a lot of research over the decades of the RMS Queen Elizabeth, and he tells me that he never found evidence to say that it was absolutely positively intentional arson. But then again, there's no proof saying it wasn't, so nobody really knows. Let's see. Ozzy says, did they get Queen Mary's whistles working again? They got so like I was saying, the third whistle that was loaned to Cunard to put on the Queen Mary 2, that was restored, so that way they could use it on the Queen Mary 2. But there is only one operating whistle aboard the Queen Mary today. They only need one. I mean, it's only sounded, you know, as part of, you know, just tradition, I guess, but it's not like they need both of them running. So only one of them runs. The other one, I think, is in need of repair if they want to get it to sound every day. But they don't need it to sound every day. So, yeah. But the Queen Mary's whistle, there is still one that operates on the Queen Mary, and it sounds several times per day. Okay, we're going to end the live stream soon because we're coming up on 2 hours. Alex says, very interesting. Thanks for sharing this information. Which ocean liner do you think is currently the most popular floating hotel / museum / ship, or both? Most popular? I don't know. I'll be totally honest. I don't know which one is the most popular. I know the Rotterdam is really, really popular. But so is the QE2. The QE2 is a successful hotel and museum in Dubai. It's actually kind of funny because when I first started talking about Queen Mary on this channel, trying to drum up some support of the Queen Mary, there were a lot of naysayers who were like, oh, if you look, no ship converted to a hotel / museum has ever been, successful. And I'm like, That is not true. Almost all of them that are converted to museums or hotels are successful. Like, that is so weird. But that's the naysayers for you guys. The naysayers, they want you to lose hope. They hate ships. They just hate them. I don't know why. They're one of those, kinds of people that can't stand history. They don't like it, and they want to destroy everything about history so you don't hear it. Like, it's just weird. But yeah. So but I know the QE2 is a successful hotel and museum in Dubai. I don't know how successful Rotterdam is. I think I've heard some people say that it's very much beloved. It's well taken care of. So I'm assuming that means it's earning a lot of money. And there's a few others. Like there's one in Japan. I've never researched it though, so I don't know how successful it is. Then there are smaller liners like the SS Kiwatin. Before they closed the Kiwatin for the pandemic, the SS Kiwatin was a pretty popular attraction. It was well kept up, I heard even the engine room could still run on the Kiwatin, which is just astounding. That ship is from like 1907 or something like that. Incredibly old. Yeah, Spyro says that, they heard the story that there was a pile of life jackets that were set on fire with a blowtorch. Yeah, that's another one of those things, like, it is very, 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 very likely that it was arson. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that there is no solid evidence. No one's ever come out and said, this is how the Queen Elizabeth officially burned. Like, this is what caused it. This is who did it. I'm just saying that, I can't tell people this is your answer. Because the truth is that nobody has agreed. Like, there's no fire marshal, no country president has ever gone on the air and said, this is what happened. It was an act of anti-imperialism or whatever. Like, nobody did that. Probably because they were afraid of President Mao. So that's probably why no one ever announced it. But all I can tell you is there are several different theories. And yeah, the life jacket one is said to be how the anti-imperialists set it on fire. But you don't just randomly find a pile of life jackets on board, doused in oil and grease, that randomly catches on fire. Like, obviously someone started the fire, So, but yeah. There's just a lot. It's a lot to unpack. I'll put it that way. It's a lot to unpack. Daniel says, hey Alex, does Queen Mary do anything on the anniversary of Titanic's sinking? No. I mean, that's not to say nothing has ever been done on the anniversary of Titanic's sinking. I mean, but I mean, it's not an annual thing. Like, I'm sure there's been like museums and stuff on board the Queen Mary that was in remembrance of Titanic's sinking and stuff like that. But as far as I know, there is no annual thing that happens on the Queen Mary for Titanic sinking. Part of the reason is because simply the Queen Mary and Titanic have almost nothing to do with each other. Two very different things. You might as well ask, if the SS Rotterdam does anything for Titanic's anniversary of sinking, because they're almost very different from each other. But the Queen Mary has had museums or exhibits on board that showcase Titanic artifacts and stuff like that. Particularly after the James Cameron movie came out, there was a huge craze of people who wanted to know more about ocean liners. And so the people who were operating the Queen Mary at the time tried to capitalize on that by opening some exhibits that featured Titanic artifacts and things like that. I remember seeing one of them myself. But yeah. You know what's funny? That webcam in the corner of the screen that is showing the trains, it shows everything perfectly white. But if you actually look behind me, you can see that the lights are extremely yellow. I do that because I don't want the layout to look bright white when it's on camera. But that webcam does not pick up on the subtlety of the yellow lights. So it looks like Snow White on the screen. And it's really annoying. Even when I lit it in red earlier just to see, and the red did not even show up. It still showed up as white. So weird. Chris, yeah, I saw there was a video released of them blowing Titanic's whistle. It was pretty spooky. Modcat says, how much coal did the Queen Mary burn a day? Absolutely none. The Queen Mary did not run on coal. The Queen Mary ran on number 6 Bunker C fuel oil. So the Queen Mary was designed with huge oil tanks that lined the length of the ship. Some of them were 8 feet wide. Some of them were 16 feet wide. And they were 4 decks high. They went from G deck all the way up to D deck. If I'm remembering correctly, it's either G or H deck, I forget, but I think it's, yeah, anyway, 4 decks high, and they were filled with oil, and so the ship burned oil in her Yarrow boilers. So, yeah, so a lot of ships that were built before the 1920s were converted to oil ships in the 1920s, because by the 1920s, coal was too expensive. They all switched to oil. So when the Queen Mary was designed and built in the early 1930s, she was designed and built to burn oil. Yeah. Alex says, do you think that the QE saved the Cunard line and the ocean liners in general? No. I think you meant to say QE2. Because there's like a little quotation mark afterwards, and I think you meant to say QE2. So the QE2, I wouldn't say it saved Cunard line. I mean, it really depends on how you look at it, to be honest, because you could interpret it several different ways. I personally do not believe the QE2 necessarily saved Cunard line. The QE2 did modernize the Cunard line, that's for sure. But the QE2 was still cost them a huge amount of money. They were in debt by the time the QE2 went into service. Thankfully, though, the QE2 was able to do the transatlantic run. But the thing was by the time the QE2 went into service, the transatlantic run was no longer necessary. So I wouldn't say it saved Cunard in that sense. Cunard had to become a cruise ship company. Because like I said, the transatlantic run was no longer necessary by the time the QE2 went into service. So, but she was their latest cruise ship, essentially. She was an ocean liner, but she was designed to be able to do cruising because that's what they needed her for eventually. So, but she was very, very expensive, which is why Cunard Line ended up building custom-built cruise ships, because they just needed cheaper ships that could do a very specific job. And the QE2 continued to cost them loads of money. I wouldn't say, I mean, in the early years, the QE2 did cost them a lot of money. But towards the later years, the QE2 made them a profit. Not a huge profit, but a profit. And then it wasn't until the late 1990s that Queen Mary, or Queen QE2, I'm sorry, that the QE2 was really making them a lot of money because, especially after the James Cameron... See, the James Cameron movie made a huge difference to the world of ocean liners because then the QE2 became even more popular. All because of the fact that after Titanic came out, people wanted to experience what it was like to be aboard an ocean liner, like a true ocean liner, not just a cruise ship. And so the QE2 became way more popular. Thank God it did, because that's what made them make the decision to build another ocean liner to finally replace the QE2. There was for the longest time, people were worried that Cunard was not going to build another ocean liner. And thankfully they did. They built the Queen Mary 2. And the Queen Mary 2 is a very popular ship. I would kind of be surprised if another ocean liner was not built after the Queen Mary 2. Only because of how popular the Queen Mary 2 is. But yeah, that's a story for another time. Carter says, did they film the Queen Elizabeth II in a film? I think they did, but I don't know which film. I would be surprised if they didn't, to be totally honest. It's a very famous ship. Ozzy says, so the Queen Mary becomes the first ocean liner to use oils in their engines. No. No. The Queen Mary was not the first ocean liner to use oil in the and it wasn't in the engines, it was in the boilers. So it wasn't the engines. The engines ran off of steam, but the steam was generated through the boiler steam boiling power. What am I trying to say? The boilers generated the steam. Titanic used coal in the furnaces to heat the water in the boilers. Queen Mary did not. Queen Mary used oil in the furnaces to heat the water to generate the steam, which drove the engines. So Queen Mary was a steam ocean liner, not a motor vessel. Yeah. But Queen Mary was not the first either. So, you know, I mean, there were plenty of others that came before her. You know, I mean, like I said, like Aquitania was converted to run on oil in 1922, I think. Aquitania was originally a coal-fired ship, but was converted to oil in 1922. So, then the Aquitania was not the first. There were ships dating back to the 1890s that ran off of oil. The Turbinia is a ship, very small, but a ship that ran off of oil. So yeah, it was not the first. Yeah. Alex says, which ocean liner do you think had the best interiors? Thanks for answering my questions. I can see you're a clever and nice person. I enjoyed my time here, and I hope to capture another live stream. Thank you so much. Well, obviously, my favorite ship. My favorite ship is always going to be my favorite ship for all those reasons, and that would be the Queen Mary. In my opinion, just my personal opinion, I think the Queen Mary has the best-looking interiors. Now, I mean, today they're pretty raggedy looking. They need some help. But originally, when the Queen Mary went into service in 1936, in my opinion, that was her best. She looked the most beautiful she ever looked. I even liked the way she looked more than the Queen Elizabeth. And the Queen Elizabeth looked pretty beautiful on the inside. But I still think Queen Mary just had more of the old magic. You know, Queen Elizabeth was more modern looking. But yeah, I think Queen Mary had the most beautiful interiors. Modcat says, what if another ocean liner was built? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's not like it's going to change anything. It's not going to make ocean liners more popular by building another ocean liner. They would treat it like a cruise ship. And most people don't even know what ocean liners are, you know. there are a lot of people who I tell them, I'm like, oh, you know, they say, Alex, would you ever take a cruise? I say, no, I don't think I would ever take a cruise. And then they say, oh, but you're planning to go aboard the Queen Mary too. And I'm like, it's because it's not a cruise ship. You know, so a lot of people don't know, you know, so I don't think it would make any difference. Daniel says, do ocean liners operate similarly to steam locomotives? You can, I mean, in very simple terms, yes. There are boilers that generate steam pressure, and that pressure drives the engines. So in that way, yes. But, you know, if you were to open up an old ocean liner and look at it, does the machinery resemble anything like a steam locomotive? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They look so far different on the inside than a steam locomotive. So, yeah, especially the turbine liners like Queen Mary. Queen Mary was a steam turbine liner. There's only been a handful of steam turbine locomotives. I think, if anything, there was gas-powered turbine locomotives, which don't even use a boiler. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, they're two different things, you know, they're very two different things. But essentially, it's the same idea. Chris says, Olympic was converted to burn oil in the early 20s. Yep, a lot of liners were converted in the early 20s. Almost all of them got converted at the same time, within the same 5-year span, because coal just became, after the First World War, coal was too expensive, just way too expensive. So they all converted to oil, and they all burned bunker sea oil. Bunker sea oil is basically like, metaphorically, the bottom of the barrel, because it was just the oil that nobody wanted. You know, they created petroleum products and whatever. They created diesel, they created gasoline out of oil, and then what was left was this sludge that nobody wanted but was still useful. And so the ocean liners and steam locomotives were converted to burn that bunker sea oil, because it was cheap oil that pretty much nobody really wanted. Hey, Pookie Smoochie, you made it right at the very end. I was about to end the live stream. I'm just trying to catch up on comments, and I'm going to get going. But Chris says their favorite liner would have been Britannic 2. Interesting. Just dropped your phone in the lasagna. Oh my gosh. Hope your phone's not damaged. But on the other hand, your phone will taste really delicious. Alex says, when do you think is the Queen Mary 2 going to be taken out of service and possibly scrapped? For me, at least, it would probably happen after about 15 years. I would say that's a safe bet. I mean, generally speaking, cruise ships and ocean liners, they're generally not kept in service after 40 years, just about. So it's possible the Queen Mary 2 may remain in service. You know, let's see, it went in service 2004. So 40 years would be 2044. So I wouldn't be surprised if by the year 2040, they're looking at either scrapping or selling the ship to someone who wants to save it. I'm personally hoping when that day comes, somebody will save the Queen Mary 2 and convert it as a floating hotel. I mean, when you think about it, they did a lot of conversions for the Queen Mary to make it a hotel. They did a lot of conversions to the QE2 to make it a hotel, especially the QE2 because they made the rooms extra large. But the Queen Mary 2 is so modern that it actually wouldn't need much of a conversion. It could pretty much become a floating hotel as it is, without much capital, like overhead. You know what I'm saying? So I'm hoping that when the day comes, they will save the Queen Mary 2 and turn it into a floating hotel. It seems like the most profitable compared to QE2 and Queen Mary. Daniel says, what do you think? Do you think that Long Beach could help with Queen Mary's interiors? Do I think that Long Beach could help? They are. They own the ship. They've been working on it since last February. So actually right now it's been exactly 1 year since they started working on restoration of the Queen Mary. They've been doing restoration work. They've replaced some of the carpeting on the ship, not all of it, but some of the worst areas have been replaced. They have been doing some wall panel refurbishments. They have been fixing and replacing broken light fixtures. They have been repainting interiors where paint has come off. They have been working on the ship's plumbing, working on the ship's... there's a hotel boiler on the dock that supplies hot water to the entire hotel of the ship and the restaurants. That boiler is being replaced. It is not an original boiler, just in case you're wondering. It is just a hotel boiler from the 1970s. That is being replaced. They've been doing renovations to the ship for the last year. It's been slow going because they are a city. Things happen slower with government, and of course there hasn't been much money, to spend. But yeah, renovations are going on right now, all thanks to the city of Long Beach. So, let's see. Oh man, the comments are really going. Modcat says, what type of gas do ships use now? I don't know. I know they use diesel, but I just don't know which diesel. Thank you, Alex, about the compliment of the train layout. When did I start making it? I started in late 2018. Yeah, either late 2018 or early 2019. That's when I started. Patrick says, after the oil burned off, did they have water ballast tanks? Yes, every ship has water ballast tanks. Queen Mary had 66 ballast tanks. Some people would argue that Queen Mary had like 77. And that depends on what you consider a ballast tank versus... I don't know, it gets kind of complicated, but... no, I think it did have 77, because 66 was the double bottom. And then the extra amount, the extra 11, came from the wing tanks. So yeah, the Queen Mary did have 77 ballast tanks aboard. And yeah, she still does. She still does have it. They still use the ballast tanks, by the way. A lot of them are filled with a special type of drilling mud, just to permanently ballast the ship, but then they still keep some tanks filled with fresh water to ballast the ship. The fresh water allows them to pump it in and out very easy, so that way they could adjust the ship if they need to. Let's see. Pookie Smoochie, that would be an interesting idea. Converting the Queen Mary 2 to be the hotel of the whole thing. Boy, there's a lot of comments now. I'm trying to get through all of them. Yeah, thank you, Alex, and the Seaside of Bulgaria. I'm glad you enjoyed it here. That's exactly what these live streams are for, is just to kind of talk to other ocean liner enthusiasts. And train enthusiasts as well. Empire of Waterloo says, hi, Alex, just putting the roof of my model castle. I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. Awesome. Chris says, in 1934, they started scrapping the Olympic. Alex says, by the way, when is the next live stream going to be? So I usually do them on Sundays and Wednesdays. Sundays are at 3:30 p.m. Sundays are not always tea time, though. Sometimes they are just me working on the model railroad layout. But Wednesdays are usually absolutely tea time, 4 p.m. I do them half an hour early on Sundays because on Sundays, another Oceanliner channel called Historic Travels, he usually does his Sunday live streams at 4:30 p.m. my time. And so in order for me to not, overlap with his and stuff like that, I try to keep mine at a distance from his, so that way people don't feel like they have to rush and leave his or leave mine, that kind of thing. just going to try to finish off these comments. I got people texting me right now. Let's see. Alex says, wow, you've been making this train for 5 years. Kinda. I mean, for 2 years I wasn't working on it at all because I moved up here to Portland in 2020. I couldn't work on it until I got my own apartment. I was renting a room from my sister for 2 years, and then I got this apartment at the beginning of 2022. So for 2 years, I actually wasn't working on it. I only started working when it came to my apartment. And then as many of the people on this channel saw over the course of the winter, I've been working a lot on it because after 5 years, I'm just like, oh, I want to see some progress, you know? So yeah, you will be seeing more work happening on it as time goes by. Taylor says, if you had to replace Queen Mary in Long Beach with either Lusitania or Mauretania, which would you choose and why? You're asking me on whether to replace Queen Mary? It would have to be Mauretania. I do like the Lusitania a lot, but Mauretania was more beautiful in my opinion and has more of a history to it. So I would choose Mauretania, but I could never. If someone gave me the axe and said, you gotta, axe the Queen Mary, I would not do it. I would not do it. Alex says, are the live streams always the same time? No, Wednesdays they're at 4 p.m., but 4 p.m. Pacific time. Sundays they're at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. So on Wednesdays I start half an hour early. Let's see. Chris says, hey Alex, have a good night, have a great weekend. Thank you so much. Alex says, I'll look what the computer tells me. I mean, I'm a student in 7th grade, and I was going to school in the mornings. Now I'm going to the afternoon, so I might be able to join again. Okay, cool. That's actually pretty cool. I'm always happy when I hear young people in the chat and stuff like that talking about their love of trains and ocean liners, because these are the things, like, this is what I set out to do with my channel, is to make it more appealing to younger people, to try to get them interested in history and get them interested in these cool things, So it's always nice to hear when there's young people who can appreciate that. Listen to me, I'm like 30 years old. I'm talking about young people now. I wish I was still in my early 20s. All right, folks, I do have to get going now. It has been an hour and 22 minutes since I started this or 2 hours and 22 minutes since I started this live stream. But yeah, stay tuned for the next live stream on Sunday. It'll either be another tea time or me working on the model railroad. Either this Friday or Saturday will be my video about the history of the Forney type steam locomotive. It's actually pretty interesting. So even if you're not interested in trains, you might actually think it's pretty cool and how it works and stuff like that. So yeah, and then I'll be working on some type of Queen Mary video in the coming weeks. So anyway, thank you all for joining me, you guys, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.